Hello, everyone, and welcome for today's webinar. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Dal, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager at BigView. And please let me know that you're with us today by writing in the chat where you're from. And if you know BigView, let us know that you're here. And in the meanwhile, I just want to note that this workshop will be recorded and available for watching after the live event, so you don't have to worry about that. And of course, at the end, there will be a Q&A session, so all of your questions will be answered. So today, we will learn how to look, sound, and engage on screen. And for this reason, I invited Ges Ray, is Speak Performance Skills and Presentation Trainer and the keynote speaker. And Ges, the stage is yours. Hello, Ges.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tal. You are a media publishing business. Now, that's not even a question. It's a statement. All of us in this virtual room, this virtual world, we are social media publishing businesses. We take the information we need to share, we think we need to share, and we share it virtually or on social media. So in a world where anyone can create media, all of us are effectively publishing companies. Zoom sessions, vlogs, webinars, live stream, YouTube channels, TikToks. I'll do a 30-second dance for you. We cannot stop dancing, whether it's on TikTok or just pressing that little red button on the phone or the button on the camera. We want to press, record, publish. With little foresight, perhaps, as to the permanence of what we're recording and what's going out there. So how can we build our performance skills, our speak performance skills, be more professional in front of our clients and in front of our audience? So in this really short session, let's look at a couple of fundamentals, the sort of fundamentals that make you think, I know that, but in the heat of the moment tends to get forgotten. And also look at a couple of thoughts around engagement with your audience through this looking glass that we have to use when we're communicating. Now, please do use the chat box, throw in questions as they occur to you, and we'll pick up the questions at the end of this session. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. Now, you may recognize that from our famous UK Shakespeare, one of the most famous writers in the world, but so true today. So 3 questions to ask of yourself as you are presenting. 1, how do you show up on screen? 2, what's the experience for your client, your audience, the other side of the screen? And 3, why does this even matter? Why are we bothering to look at it now? Let's deal with that last one first. Why does it even matter? Think of your lives, your daily lives, of your clients' daily lives, your audience daily lives. You are cocooned in a slick, professional transmedia bubble every moment of every day. It surrounds you. Who else tries to record things on the TV recording box so they can miss the adverts? If you are like me and you record as much as you can so that you can skip the adverts, just chuck yes in the chat box. So all the yeses for those of you who are like me, and try to avoid the any advertising that comes through, because you just had enough. You want to watch the program. If you're like me, you avoid as many adverts as you can. So put yes in the chat box if that is you. Yeah, I can see the yeses pouring in. I'm with you every single moment of the day. But now you may be saying, oh, I can resist that hype. It's fine. It doesn't affect me. I'm absolutely okay. Yet the slickness, the professionalism of the media that surrounds us. You've only got to go back to advertising from the 1970s or even the 1960s to compare where we are today. The professionalism that surrounds you and your clients every moment of every day sets standards. Now, you're professionals. You're accustomed to setting high standards when meeting people in the room. But our challenge now is that our audience's expectations, our clients' expectations are set before we've even appeared on screen. So let's look at a couple of fundamentals, and I'm going to do an audience poll via the chat box, if you're okay with that, to give me the answer. So let me give you the question, and then the answer will be A or B. So let me make it clear first. The question will be, when you are delivering on screen, such as now, or when you are recording using BigView, of course, to put your recordings together, do you know where your audience is? Put A if your answer is yeah, reasonably. Not sure if they're in the office or at home or disappeared to make a cup of tea, but I sort of reasonably know where they are. Or B, if you know exactly where your audience is at the moment that you are on screen or recording. So put A if you feel I sort of roughly know where my audience is, or B if you feel, if your answer is I know exactly where my audience is every moment that I'm recording. So the A's are pouring in. Now I'm with you in many respects, because when we're delivering a webinar or we're on screen with work colleagues or for a business presentation, we can't actually know physically where the audience is. But may I suggest that the answer to that question is, as Peter Pierre's just said, B. Your audience is that Gorgon eye that sits atop your laptop or sits on top of the screen, or is the camera that is staring at you, that red dot, that green dot, that blue dot, whatever color it is, that is your audience. So I will invite you all as one to put your thumbs up to where your camera is at this very moment. And if I could see you all, I would see a mass of thumbs, I'm sure. Where your audience is where your camera is. And that is where they're going to create the communication with you. So back to being professional. You are all professionals, of course you are. If we went back pre-pandemic, meeting a client, a customer, someone in a room would have been totally automatic for you. You understand the importance of engaging visually with people. Of course you do. But now you're on screen. And sometimes there's that sense of something missing when we're engaging with people. Now, when you're recording, slightly different, because you're making the effort to use the camera to get that absolutely perfect. And I don't need to tell you that if you're recording on a camera or a phone, and if you accidentally look at the screen of the device rather than the camera, when you look back at it, there's that sense of disengagement. The eyes are not where they should be. It's like when somebody's taken a family snap when you've been out walking somewhere, and there's this whole beautiful grouping of people with great big grins, and by the accident or design, the one person that has looked at the camera in the corner is the one that's looking at you, and the others are missing. So where is your audience? Your audience is that tiny little dot on the screen. So fundamental number one, when you are recording, it will be more obvious because you'll be using the camera to get the recording into the can to use. But when you're on a Zoom call, a Teams call, a Blue Jeans call, an ON24 call, whatever the platform is that you're using, remember that your audience is that tiny little dot. Now, I can hear you saying already, Ges, I can't spend the entire session when I'm presenting staring at the camera and not picking up the faces around the screen. I'm absolutely with you. Yes, engaging on screen. I'm with you, Marilyn, engaging on screen. Let me give you a practical suggestion. You're probably as familiar as I am with Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule. You know what it is? Businesses get 80% of their profits from 20% of their clients. And there's an old adage that those of us of the male persuasion actually only wear 20% of what's in our wardrobes at any one time. The rest is crammed at the back. In pandemic, it's probably only 5 or 10%. But if we remember that ratio, Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule, my recommendation to you is when you are delivering on screen, okay, if you're in a meeting with friends, it does, you want to pick up all the feeling around the screen. But when you are presenting, when you are in control, talk to the dot. Exactly. Thank you, Courtney. Talk to the dot. That is your client. And if you spend 80% of your time talking to the dot, talking to your camera, and give yourself the other 20% to work around the screen to pick up the flavors. That, I would suggest, is a really nice ratio to help you create your visual engagement with your clients and with your audience. A couple of things to avoid. One, I call it the nonagenarian in the Nissan Micra effect. I'm sure you've all been there. You're driving to the supermarket on a nice lazy day, and you stop at the traffic lights and you look over there, the other side of the road. I'm looking here because it's the UK. Obviously, at the US, it'd be over there. You're looking at the other side of the road, and there's a car. It usually is a Nissan Micra. And when you look at the car, what you actually see is this. Absolutely nothing at all. You're wondering if anyone's actually driving it. And then very, very slowly, and it's usually a hat like this that appears, and then you suddenly realize that, yeah, there is someone driving that Nissan Micra, and it's a nonagenarian. But how often have you appeared on a Zoom call, or set yourself up professionally, because you're all professionals, but what you've seen of the person arriving on screen is maybe a bit of a bald head gleaming in the sunshine, or a part of the head that you don't want to show. So if we go to the other extreme, there's something that was on UK TV some time ago where a news guy on Prime Minister's Question Time was so close to the camera, I won't do it or I'll put you off forever, but you got a really good shot of his nose hairs when he was there. I will never see that chap again without remembering his nose hairs. So key fundamental number one, remember where your audience is. It's that dot on screen, and prepare yourself so that when you appear, you look professional. Okay, we're going to look professional, but here's to the next question, and I'll throw in a poll here as well, if I may. So the question is this: when you wake up your system, your Zoom call, your Teams call, when you get started on that first thing of the day, do you just switch it on and get going? And that will be A. Do you have a good old splutter, cough, and maybe a quick drink of something to slurp down to keep it lubricated? That will be B. Or do you properly warm your voice up for 10 minutes before you wake up your system? So let me repeat the questions and the letters again to give me your answers. When you wake up your system for your Zoom or your Blue Jeans call or your Teams call, do you A, just switch it on and start? Do you B, switch it on, have a good cough and splutter and a drink of water? Or C, do you warm up your voice for 10 minutes before you actually start? And there's a whole mixture here coming in. Fantastic. We can see a range of answers depending on what circumstances you're in. So let's put that into context before we come back to the voice. It's tomorrow morning. You have got a call very early for you, wherever it may be. Maybe you're dealing across the world and the only person that you can deal with at that time is really early. I've got a client in Australia, and from the UK, the only way we can make it work is that I have to go on at the crack of dawn so that she can be on the system at the end of her working day. So in pre-pandemic times, you'd have perhaps gone into the office, chatted to a few people, had a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a few conversations, got on the phone, woken up the system, and this would be nicely warmed up. Now, it's that really early call. You get up, it's still dark. Yeah, maybe grab a cup of coffee, but you haven't spoken to anybody. You haven't grunted a sound other than to the cat or the dog that got in the way until you start that session with your client, your prospect, your audience, the other side of the glass. What face and what voice are you presenting to them? Is it the nicely warmed up, I've been in the office, I'm ready to go, handshake, let's have this meeting face? Or is it the 6:30 in the morning, I haven't had my coffee yet voice? Because if it is the 6:30 in the morning, I haven't had my coffee yet voice, think of what impression, what atmosphere you are creating for your audience and your clients the other side of the screen. We could spend the next 4 hours on voice and warm-up techniques. I would love to. I'd love to get you singing at the top of your voices to get this really stretched out. But in this session, we'll just do one tiny, small thing. I'm going to ask you, and do it with me now, smile. Just put a great big beaming smile on, you to the screen. Give me your best and most brilliant smile. Why am I asking you to smile? Two fundamental reasons. One is an evolutionary one. We smile as human beings because when we give someone a big grin and a smile, what we're saying to them is, okay, you're not in my family, my grouping, but unlike a couple of tens of thousands of years ago, I'm not going to slaughter you on the spot. I'm actually going to welcome you in. We're going to have a conversation. But the other reason, and any of you who sing will probably recognize this, when you smile, it lifts the soft palate at the back of your throat and it changes the airflow over your voice. And it changes enough for the human ear to pick it up. It changes your voice from the 6:30 in the morning, I haven't had my cup of coffee voice yet, to a warm, beaming and engaging voice that your client, your audience will more likely want to listen to. Prove it to yourself. After this session, grab your phone, grab your iPad, whatever recording device you've got, and do 2 recordings of the same piece of text. Do the first one in a 6:30 in the morning, I haven't had my coffee voice yet. And then go away, do a few warm-ups, really get that voice warmed up. And then come back and put the biggest, happiest, grinniest, smiliest face you've possibly got and record it again. Then listen to both recordings. Which one would your audience, your clients, prefer to listen to? I guarantee I know the answer. It will be the one, even if you say to me, Ges, I'm not really a smiley person, it's not what I normally do. I can guarantee that if you put at least half a grin on, it will change the timbre of your voice and it will make you warmer and more engaging. A thought to finish that fundamental. Who of you remembers valve radios? Click yes with a great big exclamation mark if you remember valve radios. Now, I grew up in a council estate in the UK back in the 1960s, and the only entertainment device in the entire house was a valve radio. And if my dad wanted to listen to some very old UK programs, the Navy Lark or the Clitheroe Kid, which will mean nothing to most people here, but were iconic in their time, it was 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon. So if we wanted to listen to the Navy Lark when it hit the 2:00 mark, my dad had to switch the radio on at 1:55. And we watched those beautiful, exquisite, gorgeous bits of kit start to glow and start to reach their potential. And the sound changed from crackly, ancient radio to the sound of the radio program coming through. Think of your voice as a valve radio. It is not a MacBook Pro that works in -10 seconds to get going. It is a beautiful and delicate instrument that requires love, attention, and warming up. Again, I promise you, before you start your day on screen, your day on this looking glass and the Gorgon eye that we use to communicate, if you do a little bit of singing around the bathroom, a bit of gargling, a bit of warbling, just get a nursery rhyme and just record it just sing it to yourself. I promise you, your voice will be much better placed and it will last longer. Again, we could do a whole workshop, and I would love to do a workshop with you on voice preparation to get you better placed. So fundamental number 2 is, effectively, what is the first thing that enters the room when you are on screen with your audience? Because they've seen your face, but the first thing that enters the room is this. It's your voice. Treat it like a valve radio, warm it up, look after it, and you'll get remembered as the one with the richer, warmer, more engaging, enjoyable voice. Let's touch on a third fundamental. What do your clients actually see when you appear in front of them? Now, I'm not talking about you now, because we've looked at you, your face and your voice walking the room, but what is it that's behind you? And we'll just touch on this for a couple of seconds because it is so important. I used to be a bank manager many years ago. In the UK, I looked after private clients, very high net worth clients. So my job was to make sure they came to meeting rooms, particularly in the private bank that we used to introduce them to. And it was an experience. Taking them into those rooms was like walking into a 7-star hotel. And I'm sure when you had meetings yourself pre-pandemic, you prepared the room. You made sure it was clean and tidy. The coffee cups were all neat on one side with handles all pointing the same way. The little touches that we did in the room. How often do we still have, okay, this cup is reasonably clean, but how often do we pick up a cup and the remains of the coffee are now pouring down one side? I used to know my clients' biscuit preferences because my job was to understand them to the nth degree. Yours may be an English digestive biscuit. Brilliant. But is your digestive still sitting on the desk in view of your client? And what have your kids brought into view that you don't want or shouldn't want your client to see? I've got in this room a memory from my kids' younger days. Now, this may be the most adorable, absolutely exquisite, and unbelievably expressive orangutan you've ever seen in a glove puppet in your life. And this little chap was my daughter's favourite over 30 years ago. And it's a treasured family memory. But if I'm having a professional meeting with my client, do I actually want my orangutan on view? So I'm really sorry, but you've got to go. You can come back later. So the three fundamentals that we've covered, what's the first thing that enters the room? It's your voice. How do you ensure that you're reaching your audience? It's making sure that you look at that tiny little dot. That is your audience. And what's in the screen for them to see? Oh, so cute, says Marilyn. Yes, I agree. That's why I've hung on to it for over 30 years. It is a treasured memory in this household. But let's move on to the last section of today. How do you engage your audience? Because we've done the fundamentals. You're all pretty good at pressing buttons on laptops now. If you're BigView experts, and I'm an advocate and a fan of BigView, you know how to work it to your best. It's a brilliant app, and I thoroughly recommend it. And they're not paying me for that, I promise you. But how do we make that leap? Let's go back to that era of professionalism and that transmedia bubble that surrounds all of you and all of your audience all the time, 24/7. What can you do to engage your audience? I'm going to throw out a challenge for you now. Your challenge between now and next time we meet, it'll be lovely to meet you all again, is to think about how do you engage your audience so that they want to stay with you? How do you compel them to keep listening to you? How do you haunt them with some sort of emotional engagement? And how do you obsess them with the knowledge that you impart, with the value that you give them, so they keep wanting to come back? Now that is the entire content of a 12-week program. But let's focus on one area, just trying to get their emotional engagement. I'm going to ask you to think of a story from childhood. Think of some event in childhood that you can just take your mind back to, and it will come back with just a little bit of recall. And when you think of it, just quickly chuck it in the chat, and let's see what stories we come up with. I'll give you an example to set you on your way. And this is from a colleague of mine who may well be watching and listening on this session. He was eating a meal with his family when he was probably 6 or 7. Yes, you do. Yeah, eating away. And he saw on his plate a piece of cauliflower. And in the cauliflower was half a maggot. Just visualize that for a moment. You have just looked at a piece of cauliflower on your plate, and sitting there staring at you is half a maggot. Where's the other half? My colleague has never been able to eat cauliflower again. Have you got any stories that touch on that sort of visceral feeling, that emotion, that shudder that still, 40, 50 years later has never left you? If you've got an example, just chuck it in the chat and let's see them. The point of that illustration is your audience are not going to remember facts and figures and information. We feel that if we put loads of information onto screen, death by PowerPoint, loads of figures, and pour facts into them, our audience will love us to bits because they've been satisfied. I would suggest to you that all those facts and figures will just bounce off them like rain off the pavement. What they will remember is how you engage them with some sort of emotional touch, something that makes them feel what you have said, something that makes them really understand in their own life and make it relevant to themselves. A feeling, a smell, an idea, a visceral image that will never, ever leave them. Oh, there's some stories coming out. That's absolutely. I remember young when my parents were planning on the house, I was imagining it like a tree house. Oh, isn't that glorious? And I will guarantee that will never, ever leave you. You will, for the rest of your life, remember your parents' house as a tree house. That is how we remember the information via a story. And let me wrap up this session in total with just a thought on stories and why we as human beings respond to stories, not to facts, figures, and information. I'm going to show a favorite little friend of mine to you. He's not quite as cute as the orangutan, but this little chap I call Eric because my grandfather's name was Eric. And this is a sort of a practical tool that he would have had in his toolbox. Now, if everyone remembers these are beautifully exquisite pieces of wood and brass. And this, to me, it's a yardstick because that's the generation I am. To many of you, it will of course be the centimeters and meters on the other side of the measuring stick. But if this beautiful, again, tangible, touchable, always memorable bit of kit represents the amount of time that we as human beings have been communicating. We've been around for a couple 100,000 years, from the days we grunted in the cave. So if this represents from the days we first grunted our first hellos to our fellow human beings in the cave to now, the amount of time that as a human being you have been able to write is where this tiny elastic band is compared with the entire length of this bit of stick. So the amount of time you've been able to write is where this little elastic band is. And that's back to ancient papyrus in the desert. The amount of time you have been able to send an email, whiz a WhatsApp, send a Snapchat, do a TikTok, whatever it is that takes your fancy today, is so far off the end of this scale. There is no elastic band small enough to fit. So as a human being, what I relate to when you are telling me your stories, I was eating mashed potato, was adding salt and the top fell off and I ate a spoonful of salt. To this day, I don't add salt to my food. One image that you will never, ever forget that. These type of things is what we remember. It's the stories and it's the emotion related to them, not the fact that we've whizzed off a quick reply to a WhatsApp conversation or responded to a LinkedIn presentation. So let's wrap up this session, otherwise we'll run out of time today. What we've covered in this really short session is a couple of fundamentals. Remember, your audience is that tiny little dot on the screen. That is your audience. Focus on that. Whether you've got 1 or 1,000 in your Zoom room, that dot is your audience. What enters the room first? It is this amazing, beautiful, delicate instrument. Treat it like a valve radio. Warm it up. Do some ooh and I don't mind being daft, do some daft exercises just to get it going. Going to the toilet before the rest of the family wake up and just get it going. Thirdly, remember what's on view to your clients. Those are the fundamentals. Lastly, we have to come. How do we make ourselves different and more memorable to everyone else out there who is also presenting on screen? It's about engaging. It's about being memorable. It's about telling stories. It's about obsessing them with what you can deliver, your value, and haunting them so that they want to come back and listen to you. Now, Tal, let's turn to the questions for today.
Great. So I just want you all to see our background now, so you can talk about that. So basically, we had some questions, but feel free to ask more now. We had the question from the beginning. I'll put it on the screen. And in the meanwhile, I will send Ges information and also BigView's information in the chat, so you can contact him or download BigView if you don't have it yet. So let's start with the first question.
How do we refer to our outline away from the camera during our broadcast? How do we prepare outline that works? Robin, I'm not entirely with you on outline. If you mean the background to what we're presenting, here's a practical example from the work that I do. So what you see behind these images is actually the Ovation Theatre in a little seaside village in the UK called Standing on the Stage, which is all part of the workshops that I deliver. But this is the outline that I present to you when we're working in a workshop on Zoom. It's about the atmosphere that we're creating for the event that we're delivering, making it relevant and make it engaging and making you think, oh yeah, we're performing. This is speak performance. I'm on stage. We're in a theatre. So if that's what you mean, Robin, that is what I'm talking about. Creating images and background that are relevant to what you are delivering, the value that you're delivering to your audience. And if you've got a window with daylight, now it's evening here, so I've got a couple of big photographic lights up in the corner, but daylight is beautiful. That will really make it warm and comfortable for you. But experiment with lighting. Sometimes if you're on Zoom, a couple of small lights around you, but in front of you, will answer the problem for you. Or Marilyn, I'm going to pick up on that one. I'm doing my first presentation. I'm told to make it perfect. Don't we want that? Don't we want it to be absolutely perfect? If we were perfect all the time, then we would never be learning, would we? My answer to that is build speak performance techniques. Now these, there's a very simple book that you can get from my website. There's a workshop that I run that we can work on. But at the end of the day, build your fundamental presentation techniques and be yourself. I used to be a bank manager. And in those days, the feeling was I had to represent my organization. I had to wear the straitjacket of the bank that I worked for. I would suggest that in today's world, we're given the freedom to be ourselves. So get the speak performance techniques right. Make sure you're standing for a start. Get your breathing right. Get your voice right. Work on those, and then be yourself and let your personality come through. Let me pick up another one. How do you construct stories around the financial services industries, i.e. insurance and investments? Oh, I'm with you where? So Savita, I'm with you as an ex-bank manager. I thought the answer to the world was facts and figures and information. No, it's not. What the clients want to know in that world, in financial services, how will that product or that service or that investment, how will it change my life? How will it affect the way my world works? So pensions can be the most boring thing in the world, can't it? Someone can present you with a chart of numbers that are just going to make you fall over and fall asleep. But if someone uses that chart to talk through what's happening in your life, how you can leave assets to your children, your grandchildren, how you can provide for your own life and your retirement, and turn those numbers into stories that are relevant to you. That would be my suggestion. I'll give you one practical view from a client that I worked with. He still is. He's an expert in the world of investment in foreign agriculture, in weird and wonderful parts of the world. And he was delivering a presentation to analysts based on investing money in agriculture in Eastern Africa. And he had a chart that was so packed full of figures it made my eyes boggle. And I said to him, what does this actually mean? And he said, well, it's obvious. What it means is if you invest your money in a lorry that falls over in the mud in the rainy season, you just lost all your money. Magic. Put on screen a picture of a lorry in the mud in that season, and then give the facts and figures behind it. And he came back the next day and said, that did it. I got the attention of my audience. Build a story around it. Any more questions that are coming up that I can answer right now? How do you make your viewers feel loved virtually when you are streaming? When we're streaming, of course, we haven't got the faces on screen, have we? My suggestion is use the chat box. So what I did today was ask you to do a poll effectively. Yes, A, B, and C. Use the chat box to engage your audience, so long as what you're saying is capturing their interest, of course, but engage your audience through the chat box. And here's another practical tip on those lines. If you're doing a pre-recorded session that you know is just going to be you on screen and a chat box, plan ahead, which is what actually my workshops are all about, planning ahead to reach your audience, create the poll, and then perform as if those answers are coming in. I asked you a question, A, B, and C. Oh yeah, I can see A, B, and C coming in. There's a real mix of answers coming in. Keep them coming in. Of course you can't see them because you're recorded, but it creates engagement with your audience. And there was a question just a few moments ago about standing up. Now, some people prefer to sit quietly at their desk and deliver their session. Of course they do. But if you're delivering in the room, let's say you've got the chance of your life to deliver a presentation to a room of 100, 200,000 people, would you walk up to the center of that room, up the aisle, walk up the steps to the podium to do your presentation, and sit down in a comfy armchair to deliver it? No, you wouldn't. And similarly, if you were giving the performance of your life, if there are any fellow singers out there, in May, not last year, the year before, I had the privilege of singing a very small, but a cappella solo on the stage at the Carnegie Hall, New York, as part of a concert that was a celebration of something my choral society had written. So I'm standing on the stage at Carnegie Hall, New York, about to sing because the baton's just been pointed at me. It's a cappella, there's no instruments, it's just my voice. Am I going to sit and do that? No. If you're singing, if you're using this instrument to its best advantage, you are using every part of your physiology, your lungs, your breathing. The way that you stand and present can have a huge impact on the energy that you are delivering. So again, a practical suggestion from me. Obviously, it's a meeting and you're just chatting. Fine, sit and chat. But if you've got to deliver a presentation, stand up. Put your laptop on all the breakfast boxes so that it reaches up high and gives you energy that your audience will feel through the screen. And all you've done, the difference between sitting down and giving a boring presentation and giving energy, is you've stood up to deliver it. Tal, I'm conscious that we've reached probably the end of your question time, and I probably need to wind this up now. Otherwise, I could go on all day, and I would love to meet you all at some future stage. Just find me on LinkedIn. It's Ges Ray, Gesray. If you Google it, it's the only one in the world. Find me, let's connect, and I'd love to have a chat with you after this offline.
Thank you, everyone.